Very cool video to kick off this week's episode of AEW Dynamite, and I'm never going to get mad at that. Mostly it's because if you actually get mad at pro wrestling, you're a little bit strange. Although actually no, sometimes I do get mad at wrestling videos when they're released on social media, and I see them on social media, I get pumped, then I tune into the show, and I have to watch the video again, and then I don't get as pumped. I don't know what we're talking about. Also, hello my friends, and welcome to Ups and Downs, the only wrestling review show you need if you're into positivity. But that still doesn't mean we're not going to give ups and we're not going to give downs. In fact, throughout this episode of AEW Dynamite, I am going to give you both, because I am a human being, and some things I like and some things I don't like, but that's okay, because we can still wake up the next morning and have a bagel. Let's up those down. I am going to start this week's show as well with a little bit of a quick rant, because I am perfectly fine with Jeff Jarrett having a feud on AEW television in 2025. We shall get into this later, of course, but people keep talking in absolutes, and it's totally fine if you don't want to see it, but I really would appreciate if we could get rid of the sentence, "Nobody wants to see this." Well, I am I'm a human being, and I'm totally good with it. There is just so much wrestling content on TV. I don't want everything to feel the same, so you have to give me something a little bit different here and there. And also, if it is Double J's last year in pro wrestling, let him eat some of the cake. Anyways, Dynamite then kicked off properly, and it was Kenny Omega versus Brian Cage. I now have a beard. I just thought this was a very fun match. Now, do not forget, I think this was Kenny's first match on Dynamite since November 2023, or something absurd like that. And I think we could all give ourselves a little bit of space to go, well, just thank goodness this man is back to begin with. Because, of course, he did come back from diverticulitis, I did not say that word right, and he almost died, which meant, of course, during this match, Brian Cage became an unhinged loon. He was like, even though it's a sporting contest, I am going to focus on your tum-tum and essentially try and kill you. Kenny did try to chop Brian, but that did not work at all, and Cage essentially curled him for a little bit, which is also a strange thing to do, when later on, he threw Omega into Barry Barricade, and he just crushed him into the announce table. And that's right, guess which body part he was focusing on? The stomach area. So somebody really needs to give him a call and say, "Bri, you've gone too far." For all of that as well, Kenny Omega teased he was going to do his dive, but a combination of Lance Archer and Don Callis on commentary cast distraction. So if you were wondering why he hates these guys, well, I would call it Exhibit A, but it's more like Exhibit 92. They have done a lot of bad stuff. It got so bad for Ken that even though before this he was able to reverse a bomb of power into a Hurricane Rana, when he tried to do it again, this time Cage just grabbed him and powerbommed his ass through the floor. What the flub is a powerbomb? Amazingly, Brian then decided he was going to go to the top rope, which was a terrible idea. This Kenny Omega, he just flew over the rope himself and he hit this sunset flip bomb. It was pretty good. He also got the V-trigger, but that only got a 1-2-ooh, which is when Brian Cage tried to pick him up for a German suplex, but Kenny was able to get out of that. He smacked him right in the face once. He hit another V-trigger when he decided, I don't care you're the size of the house. I will smash you with the one-winged angel. And he got the 1-2-3. I mean, the fact that Kenny Omega is able to work like this after everything he's gone through is totally wild. And Brian Cage was great here too. It's a match worthy of your time. Of course, the family jumped Kenny Omega afterwards and essentially were trying to murder him when Will Ospreay came out to make the save. So there's a story beat for you. The brand new best friends in AEW are Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay, although they did kind of share a look at one point. They're not totally sure. Ospreay also pushed Omega out the way at one point so he could do a dive onto Carl Fletcher. Listen, when they were on the up, all of a sudden, Takeshita's music started to play, and he walked out like, "I'm the final boss, and I'm gonna end you all." Carl must have secretly taken a med pack when he was on the floor, because these lot then came together to take out Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega, and we were essentially teasing here, probably at AEW Grand Slam, that we will do this tag team match. And, well, all things considered, it was probably one of the best matches of the year. There's also going to be a lot of dropping people on their heads, given that we saw a Brainbuster and the Raging Fire here. And also, do not forget that if you do want to abbreviate their names, you can say, this is Fat versus Whack. This show is terrible. It also doesn't make all the sense in the world, because now Omega can be a little bit preoccupied until he goes into his bigger card feud for the Continental Classic, likely at All In. Let's not forget, given their history, it is crazy that we're going to get that again in 2025. So I just think we should enjoy this for all that it's worth. It's a good start too. We then got another video reminding you that the Hurt Syndicate are going to be in action later, including MVP. when it was time for Chris Jericho's New York Minute. He basically told us that we are getting this crazy 12-man tag team match on Collision, which caused quite the uproar on social media over the weekend, and I totally understand it, but we do have to wait and see, because in no realm would the Death Riders want to team up with the Learning Tree, especially not John Moxley. Now, one, that rhymes, so it makes me believe, but also two, Jericho here was all like, oh man, me and John are going to be the best of buds, which tells me John Moxley is probably going to try and kill him. He also called Cope a dope, and he has no hope, because all he does is mope. I added a few of them in because I am an absolute moron. So yes, I shall be patient here, and if we do get past that match, and there's no animosity, well, I promise you we'll revisit this next week. When here came Rick. That's right, that's what I'm calling Ricochet now, because look, he's still got this new look, and he does actually look completely different, which is a huge kudos to him, but it just means because I'm a buffoon, I feel like we should change his name. Rick. It has really worked as well, because the crowd booed this guy. That's what I noticed. He had the scissors that he'd Swerve Strickland with in his pocket. So I'm sorry. You have to whack a 1 on the crime counter. I mean, it is one thing to do this in the first place, but to walk out a couple of weeks later like, here's my Werner whipping, well, someone has to call the police. The fans were all chanting for Swerve as well, which was really cool when Ricochet decided he would explain his actions, although he didn't actually. He just pointed at the big screen and he showed a photo of, again, the crime that he had committed. So listen, I understand this is a new venture for you, Ricochet, but you are just showing signs of guilt. So he's essentially crazy, but so is Strickland when his music hit and he came to the ring. And not only did Prince Nana pop up behind Rick and hit with a chair and do the dance instantly, but Swerve was walking like he was the flipping Terminator, and he had a chain. I mean, I really do think he was going to whip Ricochet's ass. So, of course, Rick just legged it and at one point even threw a security card in the way of Swerve to stop him. But this did work when we got the strangest announcement, because the commentators went, oh yeah, we're going to get this match in 3 weeks' time. I mean, what the flub are we waiting for? Well, there is a good justification. Again, Swerve did get stabbed in the head. Though I will admit to you that a small part of me would have preferred it if Ricochet hadn't gone back to the cowardly runaway guy, even though it was amusing. Because when he did come out and did this crazy act, well, there was just something about it. And of course, he does look like a 1970s hitman. But of course, at the same time, you could argue if Swerve Strickland is going to come out totally unhinged and you don't sell it, well, what was the point to begin with? It was another solid angle though, and in many ways it was Wrestling 101. But when you actually get to the match point, which is happening in 3 weeks, it does have a lot of jeopardy. Because Swerve shouldn't be losing, and Rick shouldn't be losing, so that just means I can invest more, but don't give me any shenanigans. Just pick a winner and loser, and make sure the story continues up. We then got some more videos as we saw what Mercedes Moné has been up to between Dynamites or between shows. I do like this stuff, like it was in character, but it also tells you this person is a big deal. When we did actually get the entire Hurt Syndicate versus Mark Briscoe and Private Party, in Houston we have a problem. Because as much as I do enjoy Mark Quinn and Isaiah Cassidy, and was so happy when they did win the AEW Tag Team titles, I just don't think the follow-up has worked. And here, even though they're good guys, and they were taking on some serious bad guys, deep down in my Tootsie Toes, I was like, well, you know, the Hurt Syndicate really have to win. They probably should become the tag team champions. I just don't think that was the idea, and overall we need to get these titles back to where they once were in AEW, because the promotion was doing such a good job with their tag team scene, we would all talk about it like nerds. Oh my gosh, they could probably main event a bunch of pay-per-views. So it is a down at the moment, because I just don't think we struck when the iron is hot. But listen, there are seeds being planted here, where maybe that is the future plan. I think AEW must know that as well, because in many ways, MVP, Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley absolutely wrecked these guys, but I can't help it. It was so damn cool because the Hurt Syndicate are really cool. Seeing MVP back in the ring was awesome as well, because I think it's been around about 2 years since he has done this, and they worked so well as a unit, they should probably go after the Trios Championships as well, which begs the question, where the hell are those titles? Mark and Isaiah were then decimated on the outside by Shelton and Bobby when poor Mark Briscoe tried to help. You know what happened? He got killed too, mostly because, again, it is the Syndicate of Hurt, so they were syndicating Hurt. That is the biggest waste of a sentence I've ever said. But it really was just thrown into Barry Barricade on the ring apron over and over, which is the hardest part of the ring, when MVP hit his ball in clothesline. Briscoe didn't want any of this though, so he did smack MVP in the head when he got the sort of lukewarm tag to Mark Quinn, Yeah, him and Isaiah Cassidy busted out their tag team moves, but you just knew they most definitely were not going to win. Now, Crane was able to get the flatliner, but this is when Lashley was just done, and he grabbed Mark Briscoe and he threw him into next week. And I was like, well, somebody needs to ring the newspapers. Time travel does exist. Joe was still hit with the poetry in motion, but Bob was just done. So he started hitting spears and he started hitting spine busters when Benjamin was like, fine. He got a German suplex. He hit the big kick that was super. 1, 2, 3. I mean, this was total distraction. You saw MVP take out Briscoe on the outside too with a knee. There are so many things you could do here. Like Shelton and Bobby obviously could become the tag team champions, but now that MVP is back, I suppose Shelton and MVP could go after that instead, whereas Bobby should go after the world title. I'm sorry, look at his recent record. If anyone can go, excuse me, where's my shot? It's him. The problem though, it's that it's not a problem at all. It's just not. They do this, and it's like, oh man, I'd love to be part of the Herd Syndicate, because once again, let's just use that word, they're really, really cool. It's also gone to the point where if somehow Private Party did bust out the win, there may even be a little bit of a backlash. I'm not going to repeat what I just said, because I'm running it into the ground. But when you have an act like this, which works on every level, you do have to give it an up. We then had a video that reminded you that FTR and Adam Copeland are friends, which was nice, when we also learned that next week, it's Cope versus Pac. I'm sure that will be the battle of the one-syllable names. When, yes, seemingly we got our divisive portion of the evening. We've already talked about it, but now let's get into it deep like. Here came Jeff Jarrett. Now, he admitted that he had been humbled recently when he got interrupted by MJF in around about 3.4 seconds. Now, they went over all the beats from last week and how they had fallen out. But when Jeff tried to get in there, Max or Jacob Freeman went crazy and he shouted, don't you ever interrupt me again. I was like, Max, I love you, but if you don't want to be interrupted again, you need to get out of wrestling. It happens every week. He then called himself a living legend, which is actually apropos here because that's what Jeff has been telling people for years, but it's not true, although we should focus on that last outlaw nickname, because essentially Jeff Jarrett is the guy that turns up in your favorite promotion before he kills it. So I was like, wait a minute. So he's about to kill AEW? Somebody call the cops. Now I regret making that joke because it's going to kick off the WWE versus AEW debate, but that's on me, when MJF also said, you're like pro wrestling's Grim Reaper. We then got into all the personal stuff which you knew was coming, because he was like, maybe you should get a drink, Jeff. Oh, no, you can't do that, because you're a recovering alcoholic. And yes, that is true. Therefore, Friedman is going to send Jarrett back to rehab, but before that, he's going to have his way with his wife, Karen, before he sends her back to Tennessee, and that's when Jeff Jarrett can finally understand what it's like to have a wife that's basically been with an Olympian and someone who's a generational talent. But of course, he was talking about Kurt Angle, and he was talking about MJF, and MJF was essentially saying he was going to have sex with Jeff Jarrett's wife, but surely if Jeff Jarrett was going to taste that, it would have to be his balls. I mean, look, it was a nasty line, but there were little things that didn't make sense. I really like Jeff's reaction to this, because he just laughed it off like, man, I've heard all of this before. I mean, you're just essentially trying to be me, but I've already been you, and I did it better. He also talked about the fact that he thought he was done as well when he did enter the Owen Hart Cup tournament in 2024, and that's when he realized, okay, I'm not as good as I used to be, but maybe I've got one last run. Now this is when we really got bottom of the barrel, because Jarrett said, hey man, if you want to take shots at me, I'll take shots at you. When he said that he knew that Max's mum was a call girl, and even after Max's dad had knocked up Max's mum, she still asked to be paid. Listen, I couldn't help it. I was like, I met MJF's parents once, and they were the nicest people on the planet. I think you may have made this one up. He also took a shot at MJF's Canadian girlfriend, which was a reference to Alicia Atout, because he was all like, when you were breaking it up in the ring with Will Ospreay in that Iron Man match last year, she was essentially sleeping with the rest of the locker room. Now, going forward, I think we could take all the promiscuous stuff and just move it to one side, because like I say, we still got super personal here when we were talking about the other people and their individual qualities. But I don't think you need to bring anybody else into it. Now listen, I am sure that they have talked to Alicia Atout and Karen Jarrett and they were totally fine with it. And I've talked about this many a time before on Ups and Downs. It's their choice. It's not my life. I don't get to make their decisions. As long as everybody is happy, fine. This was then proven true as well, because we went back to that casino gauntlet where Jarrett was like, Max, you didn't even have the balls to enter. When Friedman was like, oh yeah, well at least to get to the top of the promotion, I didn't have to get my daddy to buy it. That's the stuff. MJF then made it clear that he is trying to find his way back to the world title, but at the moment he can't, because he does have a big obstacle in his way. It is Double J, and apparently nobody has ever given a shit about him. It then got really dark because Maxwell accused Jeff Jarrett of thinking he can only do this because he's trying to ride the coattails of his deceased friend, Owen Hart. Now, this actually did work in the sense that Jarrett had laughed everything else off, but when he said this, oh my gosh, Double J lost his mind and he whooped MJA's ass. Now, there is no way that AEW did this without discussing it with Martha Hart beforehand, so if Martha Hart is fine with it, man, I tell you, I'm not going to say anything. That woman has been through enough. She can do whatever she wants. Eventually, Karen Jarrett did come out to calm her husband down, but of course, MJF used her as a shield so he could get away. So yes, as always, he really is a piece of trash. Once again, I certainly would tone it down when it comes to the other human beings involved, but I actually think these two did get deep and personal-like, and they made you feel something, although there is one caveat to it. It was just way, way too long. So I'm going to give that part down, and I will say once again that we focus on how they operate within wrestling companies. That story will be well more compelling. But honestly, I did think this was a good back and forth, and there's only a few people in the company that could have done this. Some people like to say, oh my gosh, MJF just does the same stuff all of the time. I mean, if you want to break it down like that, you could literally make that accusation at any single pro wrestler. I really do like the feud too, though, because as MJF did say, the world title scene is too packed at the moment. So in the meantime, why not do a feud with Jeff Jarrett? It's different. It's fun. It's different. I said it twice. I also don't buy into this idea that we can't use one legend on our show. Of course, you have to focus on younger talent, and that's arguably more important, but there should also be variety, and that's what this was. Again, we could have absolutely cut like 5 minutes off here, but I'm also giving it an up. It's good back and forth stuff. We then also learned that it's going to be Okada versus Ishii on Collision because we got a video for that. Look, I can't get mad because they have a right history together, but I do think Okada needs a proper week-to-week feud at the moment. That was one of the most exciting things when he did get signed to a US company. That's just how they do business. When AEW took me on a right ride, because it had me going, no, and then seconds later I was going, yeah. But it was Hook versus Christian Cage, and of course we've been building this for ages, so it did have some tension when it ended in a disqualification. And I actually went, you've got to be kidding me. But don't worry, because there was a part B. Bless Hook as well, because he attacked Christian during his entrance, because he totally understood the assignment. And instantly, Christian was like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. And he even tried to hug Hook, who went, you don't get to cuddle me. And he threw it. Mother Wayne was then taking care of Christian when out came the patriarchy. But Shibata was here too, meaning in the back, this must have been happening. Listen, we're not going to go out there. Well, I'm not going to go out there too. Well, we've changed our mind and we're going. Haha, good, so am I. And that's just weird backstage behavior. Hook then continued to throw Christian around when he was absolutely going to break his hand on Simba the Steel Steps, but he didn't know that Cage had recently watched The Karate Kid, so he swept Hook's leg and his back went crack. Cage then hit a bunch of Splash of the Frogs, but was only able to get the 1-2-ooh. When he hit the spear as well, and he got another 1-2-ooh. We were giving Hook a lot. He also recovered and was able to apply the red rum, but Cage just smashed him right into the floor. When the Patriarchy and Shibata were just having a big fight on the outside, this is why you don't bring kids to Disneyland. It didn't work as Hook was able to apply the red rum again, but this is when Kip Sabian and Nick Wayne ran in there after Christian Cage gave them the signal, and it was the disqualification. At first, I was so down on this, but like I say, a hero was coming. Because just as the Patriarchy was going to Pillmanize Hook, out came the returning Samoa Joe, and I yelped, man. I literally made a noise like a goat giving birth. I was so excited. He really is the coolest man on the planet as well, because instantly his aura, 2025 words, was going off the charts, and man, he destroyed these guys. And I can't help it, because I am a geek. I was like, we should make Samoa Joe the world champion. Maybe we should. Now, of course, Christian was able to run away, because we'll get to that later, and you would presume we'll do a bunch of tags here, but it also ties into the past, because Samoa Joe was basically Hook's de facto mentor. So overall, I am going to give this an up. Again, if you can make me do noises like that, well, you must have done something right. Ugh. We then had another video focusing on the people that weren't on the show. Jay White is super mad at Wheeler Yuta, which makes all the sense in the world, whereas the Undisputed Kingdom and Daniel Garcia seem to fall out, because they all want the TNT title. I suppose we'll do something with that sort. When we did get our first ever women's casino gauntlet, and of course we got a men's one recently, and listen, I love this thing, it is so damn good. I do think we should just rest it for a little while. World champion Mariah May was on commentary too, and of course Chris Statlander was in at number 1, and number 2 was Jamie Hayter. They took about 8 seconds before we all went, yep, do a match with them soon. There's also a really nice story because Mariah told us on commentary, Anna Jay isn't going to be in this, because when I beat her recently, she is never allowed to challenge me for the world title again. More of that, it was good. Megan Bayne was in at number 3 as well as our big surprise of the Casino Gauntlet. And listen, man, she's got all the power in the world, literally and figuratively, and she too got into it with Chris Statlander, and surely told everyone that may not be familiar with her, yet we should probably give her the proper graphic and get this match done soon. Julia Hart was out of 4, and of course she went after Jamie because she hates her. I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have said that. With Willow Nightingale at 5. Now, I've said this a lot in 2025, so please do forgive me, but at some point this year, you've got to make her the world champion. Listen to the reaction. Bayne also went after Willow, which is when Statlander helped out, and they kind of looked at each other like, oh my gosh, we're going to be friends again. And listen, I do appreciate the fact that AEW does keep addressing this, but I'm also going to always have that little bit of disappointment. I thought that could have been a forever feud. Never forget the street fight. Toni Storm was in at number 6, and this is when I actually realized we probably do need to change something about these Casino Gauntlets. So obviously Toni was so sad last week that she didn't win that triple threat match. There is a benefit to those, because Chris Statlander had won, and she had gone in at number 1. And given the way that the Casino Gauntlet works, unless you do get in there early, you may not get in there at all, because it can end at any time, 1, 2, 3. But it did sort of undermine how upset Toni was, because she got in anyway. It was like, oh man, why don't I even react to anything we did do there? And really, I think you need to break it down so we have a bit of a system. When it comes to those triple threat matches, which we should keep doing, if you win, you're in. If you don't lose, you can go into the shuffle, but no promises. But if you lose, you're out. You're not allowed to compete. So it's just a mini down, like it doesn't really matter. But if your brain did go back 7 days, it was a bit like, well, that was absolutely pointless. Toni has embraced the snapmare though because she is a rookie when Megan grabbed her and hurled her into Chris Statlander. Welcome to the big leagues. Statlander was so damn mad she took out everybody when Toni Storm was able to hit her with sweet chick music. When we got our next competitor, and of course it was Harley Cameron, and she basically decided, let me try and do as many pins as possible. Didn't work. Harley was able to avoid the haterade, which actually was a terrible idea because Julia Hart was here. She spat mist right into her face when she booted Jamie Hayter out of the way. When Toni Storm was back and she realized there was chaos, she hit the most devastating move in all the sports and attempt a surprise roll-up on Julia. And damn it, she got the win. So that was a good finish because of course she is the rookie. But the absolutely funniest part, I laughed out loud, is that as soon as the referee's hand had hit the mat, graphic came up in the corner, Toni Storm versus Mariah May at Grand Slam in Australia. I mean, nothing has happened as speedy as that. So I'm just going to assume the graphic designer had made a bunch of pictures. Somebody was sat in production like, oh my gosh, which button do I push? Thank goodness they got the right one. It does make sense though, and I'm sure this will be the start of the journey of the return of timeless Toni Storm. I mean, once again, it's Wrestling 101, but it's 101 for a reason. Now, I would still build an entire pay-per-view around the Casino Gauntlet concept because it just is so good. When we got to our main event, which also had massive stakes, it was Jon Moxley versus Powerhouse Hobbs for the flipping AEW World title. Now, sadly, I'm going to start off by giving this a down because when it comes to the Death Riders, well, I just feel like they've fallen into a little bit of a pattern. And if you're called the Death Riders, well, I don't think that's so hot. You just don't want the ending to matches to be anticipated in this sense. And I knew as soon as the bell went ding, 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 what they were going to do. And while it was executed very well, which we will talk about, I do just have to give that a mini down too. Maybe it's time to change it up just a little bit. Otherwise, this really was the best way to use Powerhouse Will Hobbs, because he was a monster here. And I kid you not, if AEW had decided, screw it man, we're going to make him the world champion, I wouldn't have minded at all. He's been on fire. NBA Jam. Claudio and Pac were getting involved instantly, which kind of set up the scene for this. And even though Jon Moxley tried to take that to his advantage, Hobbs was like, no, he just walloped him with punches. Jon then hit a dive, which allowed these two to brawl through the crowd. When I kid you not, William kept biting at Mox's ear to the point he was gushing blood from his hearing device. like it was all the way down onto his pecs. Imagine you never watched wrestling before. You'd be like this Powerhouse Hobbs, he's like a vampire. Moxley then panicked and made sure to distract the referee so Marina Shafir could get some shots in, but once again, Jonathan just wasn't able to capitalize because Hobbs was like, nope, and he whammed him with a shoulder tackle. He then took off with the world's strongest slam and an avalanche power slam when somehow Mox was able to get the cross arm breaker. And of course, even though Hobbs got to the ropes, Moxley wouldn't release the damn hold. So when the ref was going, listen, I will be your father and tell you what to do, here was that damn Wheeler Yuta who whacked Powerhouse Hobbs right in the face. I tell you, man, this Wheels, he's like a bee, like buzz, 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 go away. Powerhouse was still able to get the spine buster, so again, we really were pushing him, and Moxley was all kind of terrified when there was yet more shenanigans, because he basically moved Powerhouse to the ropes. Marina Shafir whacked him with the briefcase. Hobbs then kicked out of that, so Moxley gave him the Death Rider, and Powerhouse kicked out again. So in terms of making sure somebody wins when they lose, that's pretty good. You also have to make sure that the commentators talk about this for ages so nobody does forget. You've got to say it like crack. Not crack, I shouldn't have said crack. When, of course, Moxley decided, fine, I'm going to choke you so bad, your brain is going to make you pass out. That's what happened. I'm sure Powerhouse's thinking device was like, listen, bro, we can't breathe. So he went night-night. John Moxley wins. Now, the Riders of Death really did a number on Powerhouse Hobbs after this, and they even Pillmanized his leg, and that's his injured leg too. And honestly, I don't know what AEW was thinking, but as soon as they had done that, Adam Copeland's music hit, and Rated FDR did come out to make the save. I was like, bros, you are way too late. The timing of that was too funny. I also shouted, come on, Cope, don't be a dope. You need to be faster so you don't slip on the slope. And then I hated myself a bit. I am going to give that a down. Again, this was meant to be a heated angle. I just went, sometimes it happens. The good news here, though, is this allowed the commentators to be like, oh my gosh, everybody has to watch Collision. And I like the synergy between these two shows, and again, as a main event, and a way to tell you, oh my gosh, maybe we have something with this Powerhouse Hobbs. It is getting a massive up. This was really well put together, and again, this Powerhouse, he's great. It was also a really easy watch, and overall that was the case for Dynamite. Like, we did take a few swings here, and maybe we got a few misses, but I would always rather a wrestling company does that. You don't want to stay in your lane all the time. So yes, I had an enjoyable moment. Now, of course, please do let me know what you thought about last night's AEW Dynamite in the comments below, and click the video on the screen, which is ups and downs for Monday Night Raw. I have a lot to say about Penta's debut, which kind of ties in. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. I appreciate you, my friends, and I'll see you soon.